This is Paul Robinson Priday, born August 23rd, 1923. He served in the Army Air Corps from 1942 through 1945, and United States Air Force Reserve from 1945 through approximately 1965. He reached the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Corps. Today is May 29th, 2012. We are at West Jefferson Middle School, room 128, West Jefferson, Ohio. The interviewers are Michaela Crosby, Ben Farbacher, Cassidy Pelfrey, Trevor Ferguson, students, and Mr. Thomas Kitchen, history teacher. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress.
Okay, Mr. Priday, do you want to take us through your early life and from when you were born through before the war?
Yes, I'll start in the beginning. I was born out in the state of Washington on August 23rd, 1923, and my parents lived in Washington, and we made a couple moves in Washington to different times. My father's job changed, and we ended up in Spokane, which is kind of up in the northeastern part of Washington. And then came the Big Depression, and my dad lost his job, and but somebody told him he could get a job in Ohio, so he moved the family back. Or he came back and started working, and my mother finally took my brother and I on a train to come over to Columbus, Ohio, and the job my dad found out about was the Blue Valley Creamery Company in Columbus, and he was in charge of some ladies that would put the quarter pounds of butter and wrap them and put them in a carton, you know. If you see those, go to the grocery store, you see those little boxes sitting around. So he got a job doing that, and I started school in the east end of Columbus at, I think it's called Fair Avenue School, and went to school there, and then by the time I got to second grade, we made another move, and we had 2 or 3 different schools there in Columbus before we moved to out in the country near West Jefferson, and then I started the 6th grade at B school. At what was B school? I guess it's an administrative office or something.
Yes.
And anyway, that was a good experience. I had the great teachers out there, and the man that was he was the principal of the school, apparently. He had that job too, but he also taught. And he was very sports-minded, and he had the boys organized at noontime to play soccer, and so we got a good start there in the 6th grade with that those competitive games where you ran around and hit each other, and then after I moved on from there up to West Jefferson High School, and at that time, of course, the football was carried on down near the Edgewater Park. I guess that's what they call that today. And we used to change our locker room was in the Township Hall, I think, down in the basement. And we jogged down to the practice field after every night to get to practice, and they had a field laid out there down at the on that Edgewater Park, and they had, I always remember, they had the goalposts that were the closest to the creek down there. The top section of the right upright, after went over the crossbar, wasn't available. They were pieces of pipe they put up, To this day, I can't think of why somebody didn't get a piece of pipe and stick it in there. But anyway, we played down there on that field, and there was one thing about that field that it was really a nice, it was nice sod, and wasn't packed around, so you getting hit and going to the grass wasn't too bad. And at that time we played. I think we played 8 games, or it must have been 8 games. And we played several games at home, but we played a lot. Oftentimes we would play at other schools, and particularly if it was a night game. We didn't have light nights. We'd go to Mechanicsburg or Urbana, and we'd come over and play some of the Catholic schools on Franklin Park field, and the St. Charles, this Catholic school, had its football field behind the building there, and we played another game that really kind of had a stadium, but I can't think of the name of it. It's out on the east end. But so we had a lot of games away from home, but we played down at the park for our games, our home games. But some schools didn't have school buses, so they couldn't come there. We didn't go on school buses either. We just had people good enough to put us in their cars and take us over there.
Would you like a bottle of water?
No,
I've got
thank
to
you.
offer you that.
I'm all right. So, as I say, our big games were St. Charles, a Catholic school in Columbus, and Mechanicsburg, and Urbana, and a few of those others. And the first year we played. I guess I started all the games, and as a freshman, and the second year, same way. And our coach was a man named Fitzhugh, and he was a believer in good solid football, where you went straight ahead whenever possible. not too much I don't know what you call it, variety in plays. We'd have run off tackle one side and run over the other side, or up the middle the next play, and once in a while throw a pass. And we had a reasonably good season. I mean, it was a winning season, but we won more than we lost. But in the next season, of course, we got a little better. We had the class ahead of us had some pretty good football players in it, and some of we freshmen got some experience. So the next year we were a little bit tougher, and I remember I think we went over to St. Charles, and I think we won that game. And I always remember their field. It was either dirt. It was like a dirt field, but sometimes it had little stones. It was behind their school. I can't imagine why they didn't do something about that. And then, of course, Franklin, when we had to play at Franklin Park, that was a lot better. Or even the home field was a good field to play on. Although the spectators had to stand on each side, and some of them would like to bring their cars down there, they drive down and park, bring their car up to, almost to the sideline and park it and expect to watch the game. And you had to be very careful. If you got knocked out of bounds, you might be under somebody's bumper. And, but some of the teams that we played had night games, so we did get a little experience under the lights. And the next year, we did better because, as I said, the team ahead, the class ahead of us had some pretty good athletes. And we did better, and then I think our junior and senior years, maybe we were undefeated, but at least the senior year we were, but I think both years we were undefeated.
And you had a good couple of seasons there yourself, not just the team, yeah.
And then after graduation, I was planning to go to college. Even if I played football or not, I intended to go to college. My parents were pretty, they keep suggesting I should do that. But I knew I'd have to pay my way as much as possible. So I'd try to get summer jobs, and I don't know whether you know where well, the farm at the end of a street there, well, I can't think of it now. It's Greg. Greg, the farmer named Greg that's his last name was.
Greg?
Yeah, lived down there, and so he
Was
kept
it
me.
Earl, maybe Earl Greg?
Could be Earl. He kept me busy most of summer doing farm work, and that's pretty, with pitchforks and throwing bales around and so forth. So I was always in pretty good shape by the football season, but and then I think between my junior and senior year, by that time the World War II had already started in Europe, and the Yeager Machine Company was that makes paving equipment. They were, and the United States was getting ready to go to War II. We aren't in it yet, or hadn't even been attacked, but they began to build air bases down along, Yeager didn't do it, but they began to, we were trying to supply airplanes to England, and to get there, they had to fly them to England, but they had to hop from island to island, and there were several islands down off the coast of Florida where you could bend around and make one long heap, jump over to someplace in the European area. And so they were hiring, and I got in the shipping department, and our job was to make boxes to put these this paving equipment into, and then they put them on roll. This box, we build the box on rollers, and then they could roll it right into the flat car there. They had a railroad. They had a railroad track right into the building there. Of course, they had doors on the end, and that was quite an experience to build those boxes, and then we'd roll it over toward the railroad track, and somebody else had to put it on the cart. But it was interesting to see they'd come in and stencil. They'd stencil on the boxes where it was going, and they had all these island names on there. And later on, when we made our trip overseas, we flew an airplane over there. We would have gone on the same route, but as it was, after I'd gone through aviation cadet training, and that was down in Texas, we went to after we graduated from basic training in the Air Corps, which anybody in the Air Corps at that time had to go through, whether you were a mechanic or a pilot or whatever. After you went through that, they sent you to, you were supposed to go to a air base, but it so happened, the Air Force people had at that time had over-recruited, and they actually didn't have facilities for us to be trained, and so they came up with a college training program. And they made deals with these various colleges that we would be called Air Force students, and we'd take some college courses in geography and meteorology, that is weather forecast and so forth, and also how to work. Receive and pass and receive
Morse code?
what is it?
Morse code?
Morse code, right. And we had to be able to send 8 and receive 10 words a minute. That's the only nightmare I ever had. And we were in a barracks, and one night there was a bird out there pecking on the window. And I'm thinking, oh, what is that? I couldn't, he sounded just like the...
Couldn't make sense of the letters he was
Yes,
typing out.
yeah, couldn't make sense of the letters.
Can you tell us a little bit about your memories of December 7th, 1941?
December 7th, yes. Well, as I say, I was in college at that time, and we knew war was coming on, so I had already made an enlistment. Wasn't called active duty. I enlisted in the Army Air Forces. There was a sergeant that came over to the Armory at Ohio State University, which I had to walk by every day a couple of times, and I went in and signed up for that, and I didn't hear anything for a long time, but I think sometime in the middle of the winter there, I got a letter that said I had to report down to some base in Florida, in Texas, and for basic training. Well, he just said report. And so we went down, that's what we had, basic training. And then, as I said to the next move was, as I said, this college training program. And I was sent out to Oklahoma A&M College. And they had a lot of classroom work, but they had a small airport out there, a county airport, and they had civilian instructors and the civilian training planes out there. And so we all got a little flight time in those. We didn't get to solo because and the next move was to basic flying school, and that was back into the Army again. That was in Oklahoma, and we flew single engine planes. It had about a 500 horsepower engine in them, I think, and that's pretty active. You could do maneuver, all kinds of maneuvers and stunts and so forth in it if you wanted to. But they were two place, so you flew as an instructor until you could satisfy him that you could take it off and land it carefully, and then you were supposed to go up and practice certain maneuvers in it, and every once in a while that you'd have a check pilot ride with you and grade you on how well you were doing, how well you could take off, how well you could land, how well you could loop it or make a barrel roll or get in a tailspin and get out of it. easier to get in than out. And so that was a good training program because they made a decision there then whether you're going to go to multi-engine advanced training or single engine. And of course, most of us wanted to be fighter pilots, but not all of us could make that, I guess. But so I got sent to multi-engine school, and that was down in Texas. And they had the twin-engine trainers down there that were very reliable airplanes. They had retractable landing gear and a few things that we weren't familiar with. So we got down in Texas. We flew with our instructors till they thought we could fly without them, and then they put two cadets in the plane at the same time and let them do some training. And periodically you get a check ride and so forth. And you had to learn to fly on instruments. They really made a big deal out of that because when actually you're flying in the military, and you need to be able to go in bad weather. And, instrument flying was a big thing.
Did you lose any classmates during that time or training accidents?
I think in basic training we had a plane crash when we were night flying, and he was killed. But I think in advanced we didn't have that problem. And when that ended our cadet career, when we finished that twin engine training, we were made the rating of second lieutenant, and well, that is, most of us did. And the ones that hadn't done so well, they made them their flight officers. But second lieutenants were commissioned officers, of course. And then we were assigned to the school of the type of aircraft we were going to fly, and I'd asked for B-26s, and was fortunate enough to, I think, to get into them. They were the most modern of the twin engine medium bombers, and carried a good bomb load and so forth. And we then went to took training in that, and learned how to navigate and fly instruments and so forth, and then we were sent down to a base and put on a crew. They made up crews, and I was assigned as a co-pilot on a B-26, and to a cadet that had been, he just had on the class ahead. He'd gone through pilot training on the B-26. So we were assigned down in Louisiana on that, and we flew quite a bit. They had decent weather down there, and we'd fly about 4 or 5 hour missions, and we practiced bombing and so forth. And then when it came time to move, we flew out to a hunter field, and it's over on the base there, and that's in Georgia. And they gave us a brand new, shiny B-26, and we got to take it up, fly it around a couple of hours, and then we took off and flew it overseas. And we went overseas, we went up to Labrador, and when the weather was good, we took a hop over to Greenland. And then Greenland was kind of tricky. They had an air base up there, but it was, Greenland's a big island, and green, with snow cap. And, but they have a kind of a fjord along the edges of it, and you had to fly up this fjord, and there's a strip down there that alongside the water. And it was a fairly decent size strip, but it didn't look as big as we'd like to see it. So you had to fly down that ravine and get on it. But I was in the copilot seat at that time, but it was a little tricky. And anyway, from there we were there a couple days, and it was interesting. On the days we didn't fly, we had to do what we wanted to do, and we got up and walk around there in Greenland. I never thought I'd even see Greenland, and it was on, you had to go up the side of a big, a mountain, I guess, but it wasn't, wasn't hard to climb. It was just like a big hill with rocks sticking out of it. And it's kind of fun to take some hikes up there. And so that, as I say, the next trip was over to Iceland, and when we got there, and the first morning we got there, we woke up to hear anti-aircraft guns going off, and apparently they'd had an enemy plane fly over at that time, and they're shooting at him. But anyway, we left that way, and we got to Scotland, and then we flew into the base in England where the group that we were assigned to, the bomb group, 387 bomb group, was in England, and about, I suppose 40 miles out of London. But anyway, this group had been there they'd been there flying missions from there over to Europe, and but this was following the invasion, so they had an airfield there on the coast of France, and we flew over and landed there, and started to fly missions. And our missions at that time were the ground forces had moved inland a good bit, pushed the Germans back, and there's an old saying, an army travels on its stomach, meaning that you've got to keep supplying a lot of stuff up to an army, especially the food, but ammunition and so on, and other things. And so the idea was, if you cut the supply routes off, it's very, very difficult for an army to operate without a bridge out that they're depending on, bridge over a river that their supplies are moving over on a railroad or on trucks, and so or through the railroads. Europe has quite a bit of a network of railroads, and a lot of the supplies could be moved on the tracks or on the railroads, but they had to go across the water, so the creeks and rivers. And so if you could cut a bridge or damage a railroad yard, that was the object of the bombing at that time that we did. And of course, all those places were fairly heavily armed, or fairly heavily defended. with, they had anti-aircraft artillery pieces that shot a 88 millimeter shell, which is about that round, and they didn't have to hit you directly with it because it'd get up to, they could set a fuse, and if it get up to a certain altitude, it would burst, and it would throw out particles of metal, damage you if they were close enough to hit you. So, as we approached the targets, we'd have to start rocking around, but there came that time when, and that while you're making these maneuvers, you could see these explosions, and those guns fired in what they call a battery. 4 guns would fire at the same time, or 6 guns would fire at the same time. And you'd see these black puffs out there, or over there, or right in front of you, hopefully behind you. And so they kept weaving in. But there came a time when you had to level out for bomb run, and that took about a good minute to fly straight level. And that was the most dangerous part of the mission. And as soon as the bombs were away, we'd the formation would make a turn one way or the other and get out of there.
What was that like to be shot at like that?
Well,
what did that feel like?
It's a little, makes you a little nervous. Makes you a little nervous, and but when it gets real close and it bumps your car, I mean, when it goes off, your airplane jumps. It doesn't have to hit you; it's just the explosion, and it shakes you up a little.
Did you name your plane?
No, we didn't name it. I told you when the fellows that took them over there put names on. And the one they have over at the museum is one that was in our unit called Shootin In, because that meant getting into London. That was their thing they liked to do best when they were off duty. But of course it was didn't affect us because we weren't in England very long.
Do you remember the number of your aircraft? Your tail number, or?
Well, just that one, yeah.
But of yours, do you remember the one you flew?
Well, one we usually flew. You didn't always.
Right.
You'd fly some, but they had to have mechanical work done on them sometimes and couldn't fly, so you'd fly another aircraft. But they were all about the same. Everybody had their favorites. And so we'd try to bomb those bridges, and then if they'd report where they had a lot of ammunition stored and so on. And once in a while, if they could, any military unit, whether they're Germans or Americans, they didn't bunch up too well. They kind of kept spread out, so the bombs couldn't destroy a whole lot of people at once. But once in a while, though, we would bomb where some what they call a troop encampment. And sometimes when the weather was bad over us, we'd have to take off, but open over the target area. They had a reconnaissance plane flying out ahead of us to let us know. We'd have to take off and fly, make instrument takeoffs and fly up through the clouds, and then get the formation made up above the clouds. And we could fly across the clouds, and then when we had radar toward the end of our war over there. The radar, they had a squadron of planes that had radar. They called them pathfinders, and the pathfinder pick us up before we got to the target, and the formation would follow him And when he dropped his airplanes, all 36 airplanes would drop at the same time. And,
How many, oh, I'm sorry, go
anything else?
ahead. Oh, how many missions did you fly?
I was taxiing out on what would have been my 64th when the war ended.
That is a lot.
They canceled the mission.
So that would have been in, was it May when they canceled your last
Yeah,
mission?
probably was, yeah.
What do you remember most from your experience from war?
Huh?
What do you remember most from your experience?
Oh, I think flying those missions where you were really getting shot at, about planes bouncing around and so forth.
What did you guys do in your free time?
Well, I told you that when the group was near London, they went to London. But when they got there, we moved over to France, and we set up tents out in the boonies, as you might say. We weren't close to any big towns, but if you had a spare, you could get a weekend pass sometimes, or you could get time off. It was scheduled. You'd have some time off. You could get a train and go to Paris if you wanted to, or you could hitchhike down there for that matter, because there had so many military trucks moving along those roads that it wasn't hard to go anywhere.
Did you ever meet any girls there in France or England?
Well, they were there, but I got married just before I went over, so I didn't look around.
I see.
I saw, but I didn't.
Right.
Oh.
What was your impression of the B-26 to fly?
Oh, great plane to fly. Very, very responsive to controls and so forth, and it does it. And it was the fastest medium bomber we had. And you felt once you dropped those bombs, you'd make a descending turn, you'd get out of there, because that's when they were firing most of the artillery at you.
What do you think people today don't understand about bombers and the air war in Europe? What do you think people miss, a detail or something that you don't think they quite understand?
Well, I've never, I don't know. I don't discuss it with people very much. I've never had anybody, there was an old saying, well, this will be an experience that your grandchildren will be asking you about. Well, even my grandchildren don't ask me about it.
You were lied to then. Well, we're asking you about it.
Well, I'm glad you're doing it. I hope I'm making reasonable answers. It was a great experience. And I say great. It had its dangers, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but to live through it was very interesting.
How many men were on your crew?
We had about a 6-man crew.
And
2 pilots, a bombardier navigator, and an engineer, and a tail gunner.
did you lose any of them did you lose any crew members during the war?
No.
Because sometimes they'd fly with different crews, right? Occasionally here and there, and
Yeah. But, no, we never lost anybody, and I don't think we even had anybody wounded, but,
did you ever lose an engine or have a rough landing?
oh, yeah. I came back, right toward the end of the war. I was a flying first pilot after that, in that period of time. And we were flying over near Holland, and there's some Germans there, and we got over and we turned off the target, and the flight engineer came up and said, "Hey, we're losing oil on the left engine." Big smoke going out, and so we had to cut that engine off. And we were still over enemy territory, so I had to go on single engine procedure. We practiced during that all the time, to be able to go into single engine. And I had to lose a little altitude so I could get some better airspeed. By flying with one engine, your airspeed's considerably cut down. And so I came out dodging around, and the tail gunner kept telling me, oh, hey, those shells are exploding pretty hard, pretty close to us. He said, you have to turn left. All right.
Now, in all your training and preparations before the war, did you ever have to actually use a parachute?
No,
Or
no.
jump? They did, pilots were never required to actually jump
No.
beforehand.
No, we didn't. Well, we were, you know, we'd go over and they show you how to put chute on and put it.
Did you jump out of a tower though, maybe
No.
with a set line?
Not
Or
even.
not even that? Huh?
No.
What was the most difficult part of flying?
Well, I think bad weather. If you're flying in an area that has like thunderstorms in it, and you get caught in there, it's kind of bouncy, and lightning is flashing and so forth.
Is there any mission that like sticks out to you more than another that you remember it by? Or?
Well, I think that one that I had to come back on single engine was, I remember that one.
Do you remember what number mission that might have been for you, or?
Well, it was pretty close to my 64th. I mean, it was in the 60s, because it was right toward the end of the war.
How many pilots in your squadron do you think flew that many missions?
Well, when they had 65, they could go home, see. And as soon as you got, that's why I was eager to fly. I told the operator, so, hey, I'll substitute or whatever.
Now, when you started, was the limit on missions 35?
It was, when we started, it was about 55.
Oh, okay.
And previous to that, when they first moved from England over there, they were about 50 or 45 or something like that.
Did you ever see fighters, enemy fighters there?
The scariest, the one time I saw formations of fighters, German fighters go by, and they were going the other direction, so they probably didn't have enough gas to attack. So, anyway, toward the end of the war there, I saw this German fighter. Oh, this was a jet fighter.
The 262?
We'd been rumors about that. It was a twin-engine jet fighter, and I was flying with one of the group leaders, and I was in the right seat so I could look around a little bit better. And I saw that thing come swooping up like that, past our formations. Oh boy, that must be that jet I've heard about. And I relaxed and looked over the instruments, and looked up. He made a 180 turn and he was coming right at us. And he had cannon in his wings, and they were sending big fireballs at us. And it looked like it was going right at us, but it hit the plane on our right wing. And he was gone. But they got out, apparently. They said, because I met one on the way home. He got out. The whole crew got out, I guess. But they really got smacked.
Yeah. Was that the only time you saw the 262 then?
Yeah.
That would have been scary.
Well, it was close to the end of my tour, so. But he was coming right at us.
Did you ever keep in contact with any of the men from your crew or from your squadron after the war?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the crew, several of us in the crew stayed together pretty close, and we had little reunions. And the squadron would have a reunion. The whole squadron would have a reunion. In fact, the whole group would have one sometimes.
Do you still know any today, or?
Well, there are several of my crew still alive. We just keep in touch with Christmas cards and so forth. But following the war, I got, I think I was really fortunate. I got in the reserve and began to fly the planes. I flew there, got that much time in, and made some interesting tours in that cargo plane.
Where did you fly with your C-119? Is that right?
The C-119. Well, I think one of my most interesting tour was I was a school teacher, and I had a lot of time in the summertime free, so we had training two weekends a month, but I had free time otherwise, and those were weekends. There was a headquarters down in Georgia someplace, and they found out that I was available. I guess through our group communication, and that there was a Air Force pilot. This is in peacetime. They had on a base down on one of those islands off of Florida. It was a jet pilot, and he'd taken off, and he lost his engine and hit the water, and that was it. And but he had a little dog that I guess everybody in the barracks knew. He had that little dog, and his family lived in Florida, and so they sent me down there to bring that little dog back. And I had to go down and land at a base in that island. It was a nice runway, and had a nice dinner and stayed all night. The next morning, went out to the airport. They brought the dog out in a nice little pen, put him in the airplane, and flew him home. And after we got up there and flying, everything was going fine. It was a nice day. And I said, I wonder what I'm going to do if that family's not there to meet me.
You get to keep a dog, huh? Can you tell us a little bit about your life then, as a civilian after the war then?
Oh, yeah. Well, as I say, I went back to school and graduated and majored in physical education, and got my first job at Mount Sterling, Ohio, as a football coach and I guess a basketball coach too, and a teacher. And I taught social studies and had a lot of classroom work. I enjoyed it, and from then I went to Wilmington, Ohio. Got a little better job up there, or down there, and I still coach football, and I guess I was a reserve basketball player, coach down there too. And then after that, I went to got a better job down at Troy, Ohio, and to coach football there, and I guess I also had reserve basketball, so pretty much and then in the meantime, I'd been going to summer school, and I got a degree in administration. I got I don't know what they call it.
Administrative certificate or?
Certificate, yeah. And started looking around for well, I did look around. I just go to the university office there, and they said Mount Sterling needed a teacher, and they they'd had football there in the past, but after, a lot of schools in the Depression gave up football, those little county schools. And so I got to start football there at Mount Sterling. And then, as I say, I guess I moved on down the road.
How did you end up at Grandview?
Grandview, yeah.
When did you go to Grandview, do you remember?
Well, not exactly, but I went to Grandview and I was there 25 years.
Mhm.
I coached for 15 years, and then I became a junior high school principal. I continued to go to school in the summer and in the evening. And,
What year did you retire?
well,
About?
yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know. I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
Mhm. I had two grandmothers that taught beginning in 1934 up until the 1970s. I wondered if you'd overlapped a little
Yeah.
bit somewhere. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Priday? You still, when you sleep at night, do you have dreams about flying B-26 or
Oh, not really.
Things like that.
Never bothered me.
no? Not that it would
No,
bother you, but
no.
just, I mean, I still have dreams that I'm still teaching in my old building or, you know, that kind of stuff.
No, but as I say in the reserve, I got all kinds of flying time.
Mhm. When's the last time you flew, do you think?
Oh, that's quite a while ago. I forget when I finally retired.
Did you own an airplane of your own?
But, oh, no.
No.
I never flew in a private plane.
Do you miss flying?
Pardon me?
Do you miss flying?
Oh, not really. Not really. I used to enjoy flying. I mean, it depends on where you're going and what you're doing too, but most of the flying I did, you were going some specific place at some specific time. And you had so much gas and so forth, you had to keep track of a lot of stuff. And when you fly the airways, which you do a lot in the United States, they keep track of it. You have certain points you've got to fly over, certain towers that you can zero in on, and as you fly over, give them your say, I'm passing over such and such a spot, and my next stop's there, and I'll be there 20 minutes later. So they keep you busy on the airways.
Well, we thank you for your time today, and we
Okay.
thank you for your service to our country. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's nice to know somebody's interested.
Well, thank you.